Hey folks, my name is Adam Blyvich. I'm a solution engineer for Celonis process mining. And today I want to walk through what we have available in the back end of Celonis. So whereas all the fun stuff happened before you can actually get your hands on it within the analysis. And that is in a component called event collection. So I'm going to show you that right now. So this first screen here is kind of our top level within event collection, and everything's aggregated at the data pool level. So you can create separate data pools for each individual process, which we have here. So we have order to cash, purchase to pay, accounts payable, which is the one I'm going to be going into today. And all these can be easily downloaded through the EMS store by importing a template here. So these are all ready out of the box. And the first thing we can do is jump into the accounts payable data pool here. So as I mentioned, this is where all the ETL occurs. So I'm going to walk through exactly how we set up extractions, what transformations look like, and then how we actually load the data into the front end of Celonis. So first, we establish a connection. That's done on the left side here is where all our different screens are going to be. So we start in the data connection screen. Here you can set up any of your data connections. So if it's through SAP, that's through an RFC call module. If it's through any other database, we'll set up a JDBC connection. And this looks typical for any connection you might expect. You need to enter in the host, client, system number. And when you establish a connection to a database or a system, you'll need a username and password setup. So this might be a Celonis user. So you do Celonis RFC. We'll just keep the one that we have in here. And then this will just do password or whatnot. We have several different compression types available depending on which system. These are the SAP ones, but you get the idea. And once that is established, then we can actually start loading the data. But before I do that, there is an alternative option to the continuous extract, and that is in the file upload. So this is if you have an Excel sheet or a CSV file, this is limited to 1 GB of data. So you can either break up files. If there are larger files and you can't set up a continuous connection, the other option is go through our machine learning workbench that you see at the top here. We have a lot of different scripts that can allow you to upload any of these formats, but this is kind of the quick and easy front end if you have an Excel or CSV sheet available. All right, so back to the continuous connection. Now that we have our connection in place with the data connection, all our extraction and transformation steps, our ET steps and ETL, are within the data jobs screen here. So within data jobs, we've got several different jobs set up here. These are all different schemas within event collection. So we have our global data job. This is if you do file import, they'll go to the global job automatically. If you don't tell the system which schema you want it to go to, it'll go to the global data job. We have one for JDBC connection here in the database, and then we have the SAP ECC one, which I'm going to go through today. But they're all similar setups, regardless of what kind you're setting up. So if we go into the SAP ECC schema or data job here, I'm going to go to the full load. So we'll typically set up a different type of job, whether it's a delta load or a full load. If you want to do one daily, hourly, half hour, every 15 minutes, whatever you'd like, we can set up those individual ones as well. But if we want to look at the full load, so you might run this weekly, what we have in here is both the E and T part of ETL, the extraction and the transformation. So up top, we have our extraction section. So if I click on here, this gives us, again, this is downloaded straight from the EMS store as a template. So this already has the list of different tables that I want to pull for this particular process. And this is available for any of our templates. However, you can go in and you can add additional tables if you need to, if there are custom tables, for example. And what you can do from there is set up different types of filters as you're extracting from these different tables. And these tables that are going to be available with that add button are dependent on the security you give to that Celonis user that we saw a few minutes ago. So these are the ones that are available out of the box. And as I mentioned, now you can start adding filters. So one, you can configure which columns you want to bring in. So if you want to bring in only 10 columns out of 100 columns, you can configure which ones you want to bring in. You can, if the primary key is not set within Celonis, then you can set what the primary key is for those particular columns. You can do joins in order to do filters. This is one way you can do it. So if you don't have a filter capability within a single table, you could join it with another table first before you start filtering. And then down below, you have your general filters. So this is kind of like a where statement in SQL. And you'll have separate ones for a full load versus a delta load. Next, we get into transformation. So once we have extracted the data, we have logs that'll be generated as you do the extraction, so you could see if anything fails, if you need to rerun the log or the extraction or anything like that. But once you have the data available, then you'll get into the transformation space. And as you can see, we build out, these are all used essentially to construct the event log that we'll digest within Celonis. So there's really a few different items that we need to create here. One are any temp tables. So if you want to transform the raw tables that you're bringing in before you actually do anything with them, you can do that first. And then what we do is we create an activity table. So this one is our standard format. So this Celonis AP activities. And if you're familiar with Celonis, you'll know kind of that the three items that we really need is a unique identifier, which we call the case key, an activity name, which is usually determined based on the table and field or column name that we're pulling from, and then a timestamp. And then we also bring in sorting information in case times happen at the exact same time. User data if we want to take a look at automation, and then there's some other ones that are brought in as well, kind of as supplemental information that can be used. So this is the primary table that we are constructing in order to get that process map that you see on the front end. And once that's constructed, what we do after that table's created is that we just add each individual activity that you might see within your process map. Sometimes one of these transformations adds a single activity, some add multiple, and I'll show you kind of what that looks like. So the first one here is vendor creates invoice. We're essentially just inserting into that activity table, and we're naming it something based on where it's coming from, applying that timestamp information that we're pulling from the individual table, and then filling out any additional fields that we might want to bring in. So relatively simple here. Nothing groundbreaking. As I mentioned, you can also add multiple activities per transformation, which we do here sometimes as well. So here's a little bit more of a complex one with changes. Again, we're just inserting into the activities table. But here we're just using a case when function. That's a German one, so I'll go to the English one here. A case when function where we're saying if we're pulling out a CDPOS, because these are for change activities in SAP, if the field name is associated with a specific field, then we'll add a specific change activity. So you don't need multiple transformations for this. You can do it all in one, really, because they're all pulling from the same timestamp within those tables. And down below here, you can start imagining you can do a few joins. In this case, we're joining kind of our case table that has all our individual invoice numbers on it to the change table, so CDPOS and CDHTR in SAP. And then we're also tying to the user table, which tells us, is it a manual user or is it an automated user? So that's how we add activities, and those are the transformations we perform. We also might add a few views. So if we want to customize some of the table dimensional data we're bringing in, that's what we'll do in kind of these AP signaled views that we see in here. Now we get to the loading portion of event collection, and that's done in the process data model here. And we have one data model set up for AP. Again, this is available as a template out of the EMS store. And here we're just essentially tying the case table, which is the BSEG table in SAP, with the activity table that we just created. So we have a list of activities that are going to be associated with each invoice. And then all this other information is dimensional or attribute data. So who's our customer, or sorry, who's our vendor, what's the header data look like for those invoices, etc. Now, another important part here is scheduling these jobs. So I mentioned delta loads. You can set up, if we were to look at the delta loads, the transformations might look slightly different because you're not performing the entire extraction, and you probably don't need to adjust a lot of the master data tables. You can really just worry about the event, activity log. And if we go in here, we can set up all the details you need to set up a schedule to say, kick this particular data job off every week, every hour, every day. You can really set up to however you want to within Celonis to make sure that the jobs are running at an interval that you think is appropriate for this particular process. And that's it. So again, just to recap, everything is really brought into as a data pool. So this is really where we segregate by process. And if we look at accounts payable, once we get into event collection itself, now we can start performing the ETL. First, we establish a data connection, or we upload raw data files, which are available in these different formats. You can also use Machine Learning Workbench, which uses a Jupyter Notebook to run scripts in order to load this data, depending on the size. This is limited to 1 gigabyte. Then in data jobs, this is where we actually extract and transform the data. So up top, we've got the extraction. Again, this is available out of the box, all the tables and columns that you need for the particular process. But if you hit add, you'll be able to see all the different tables that are available for that Celonis user when you made that initial connection. We have all the filtering capabilities you might need by column, and then filter by, usually we do by time. So here we can see fiscal year and start date are the primary filters that we use within Celonis, since we typically only pull a year or two's worth of data. And then once we have the data extracted, we perform the transformations. Main activity here is to create the activity table, which has those 3 pieces of information: a case key, an activity name, and a timestamp. Then each individual transformation is really adding a new activity, such as the vendor creating the invoice, to that activity table we created. And we've got a lot of different activities that we're adding. We'll also create custom views if we want to massage the data a little bit, the raw data that's coming out of SAP in this instance. And then once we get all the data in the format we need, the activity table is created, then we load the data by creating a data model, again, available all out of the box from the EMS store. And we have our case table here, which in this case is the BSEG table. This is based on invoice position. And all we're doing is tying this to the activity table that we created, and then all these other tables, such as the vendor information, is the attribute or dimensional data that you might want to slice and dice by in the front-end analysis of Celonis itself. So that's it. Pretty easy. Everything's contained on a single platform. Where I really think the strength is within Celonis is that you don't have to jump back and forth. You don't have to maintain a separate database. Everything you could want is all within Celonis itself. The back end, the front end, the automation, the notification, the long-term monitoring, and then the advanced analytics as well that we see in machine learning. I hope this was useful. If you have any questions, I will leave my email after this video and you can let me know. Thanks.